All right, welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we are talking about the Dallas Cowboys with Paul Becerra, the host of ATB Cowboy Spot. How's it going?
Doing well, sir. Thank you, Andy. How are you?
I am doing well. Obviously, it's a great time to be a Cowboys fan, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
So, what were your expectations kind of coming into the season? You had Dak returning. What were some of your expectations?
I was definitely excited for the offense. It's just I didn't know what to make of the defense because on draft night we saw the first round pick with Micah Parsons, and up to that point, a lot of Dallas fans, myself included, were like, we didn't really want another linebacker, and Micah hasn't even been playing that position for a long time. So to use that draft capital on a linebacker, we were like, man, what's going on? Especially when we already had Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, right? So we felt we were pretty upset, but as things started to unfold, and we saw the way the rest of the draft went, and the kind of the players that Dan Quinn was picking, it's like, okay, at least the front office is letting the coordinator get guys that are going to be good in his system, guys that he likes. So so optimism started to build a little bit, but man, during like Hard Knocks and the off season and things like that, it started to get pretty exciting. But to think that our defense was going to perform the way that it has now, I don't think anybody could have predicted that. So all in all, I'm still surprised at how good we're playing. But there's a lot of things to fix. But it's like you said, it's great to be a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, and really a big part of that is the return of Dak, and
Oh no.
he is a little bit injured, a little bit banged up right now. What's the status, the latest on his injury? It's good going into the bye week. Is he going to be all right?
So it's funny you asked that because on Monday night when my buddy, my co-host Mike Crum, aka CD Piglet on Twitter, we were sitting there talking about it, and I asked him, I said, "How concerned are you about the Dak injury?" And me myself, I wasn't concerned because Dak didn't seem concerned, the team didn't seem concerned. It was like he was in a walking boot that said was strictly precautionary. Well, then he said that he was extremely concerned, and he kind of broke down the severity of a calf strain, and he kind of associated it with to what happened with Kevin Durant, and that Cowboys fans, that we should be expecting for Dak to at least miss the Minnesota game, if not more. So I I haven't heard any updates that make me feel any better, but I haven't heard anything that kind of confirmed Mike's thoughts either.
Is that a at all connected to his other injury from last year?
I don't know if it's connected. I do know that people say that when you suffer a serious injury that way, the way that Dak did, that you're more likely susceptible to injuries moving forward. That injury is connected to an ACL. So of course, we know what happened with Dak's ankle and everything last year. I just don't know if those two are connected.
Right. Well, and it would really be a shame if he was out for quite a while, and hopefully he's not. He's really playing at a high level. So
Yeah.
what do you think? You're not really hearing him nationally in the MVP discussion, but what do you think? Is he in that category with like Josh Allen, Lamar, Jackson, all of those players?
I think you mentioned Josh Allen after the Buffalo Bills lost there on Monday night. When you look at who the Bills have played, you look at who the Cowboys have played. I don't know why Dak would be fighting with Josh Allen. I feel like Josh Allen might be fighting with Dak for MVP. And outside of Josh Allen or Kyler Murray, I don't really know who's done more for their team than Dak Prescott has.
Absolutely. I mean, you could see that last year. As soon as he went down,
Yeah.
the receivers, everything, the offense just fell apart.
Yeah, he finally, it's like it took him getting injured for people to realize how good he is.
Yeah, and this year we've had and we've seen the emergence of CeeDee Lamb. Has that really helped him and kind of develop that as well, or is it kind of been mutually beneficial?
I think it's another year with CD definitely helps, and then another year with Kellen Moore, and let you seeing what he's doing, how he's running the offense. But like you mentioned, it is having the return of Dak, and I think as much adversity as he's already been through, for him to go through that, and then to come in and play the way that he's playing, it's like he was able to focus on maybe more so the X's and O's, and like calling plays at the line of scrimmage, kind of dissecting defenses. That was maybe his focus while he was rehabbing that ankle injury, and we're starting to see that here on the field.
What were the thoughts, when he got that contract? I mean, did everyone kind of like think he was worth it, or what were the thoughts on the fans?
I think the people who actually watch the Cowboys games were excited, and then you've got the talking heads on ESPN of the guys who are saying things for clicks. They were saying he wasn't worth it, this, that, and the other. But it was a sigh of relief because I really honestly thought there was a chance that they would let him. They would either franchise tag him again and let him walk to prove it, or they might just let him walk and maybe use the 10th overall pick on like a Mac Jones or somebody like that. That was my initial thought.
And what would he have to do for the rest of the season to really cement his MVP status?
I think if Dak were to win 12 or more games, and if he had 35 or more passing TDs, I think that might cement it. I really do. If the Cowboys get the number one overall seed in the NFC, I think that would do it.
Is there a path for that number one seed right now?
I mean, you look at the way the Cowboys are playing now and how the defense is playing, and then not only that, but it's been a long time since the Cowboys have kind of gotten those lucky bounces, those things to go their way. So if all those things continue, man, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I don't need to remind you, living here in Wisconsin, about the touchdown fumble wherever it was. So, and we won't bring up the name of that player on the Cowboys that happened. I mean,
Oh, man, that I can't help but think of Dez and not think about that catch because I
yeah,
feel like that would have changed the careers of Romo and Dez. Honestly, had
yeah.
that catch gone the way it was supposed to go.
Yeah, and Romo really was a likable quarterback, and you see that now going into broadcasting. How much he really knows, and it's really kind of a shame. How playoff game versus the Seahawks, and how,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of people rooting against the Cowboys. I have to say that.
Yeah, when you have a guy like Jerry Jones who gets a lot of media attention, and you've had I know not so recent, but the success that the Cowboys have had, and you're always in the spotlight, you're bound to have some enemies or some people rooting for you to fail. So it comes with the territory, but it's nice that at least if anything, Dak is finally getting the respect as a player that he is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked a little bit about Jerry Jones, and we can kind of go back to some of the other players. Um, will he ever give up his GM duties, or is that just gonna be that's him, isn't it?
No, I mean, I don't think so. As Jerry, when you hear him talking to interviews, he seems like a humble, like just a likable person, like a family oriented guy. But I think the titles and everything that means something to him, right? So I can't ever see him relinquishing that GM title as long as he's walking and talking.
Well, yeah, and what did he conduct the draft from his yacht?
Either that or the Jerry Chopper.
Okay, yeah, yeah, and he really has, he. I'm not sure how much credit he has gotten locally or nationally. You know the thing also is sometimes he's kind of been in his own way. With drafting players. What is the does the fan base kind of like him, or is he? Are they ready? To just bring in a new set of eyes.
I think for a long time, people were annoyed by Jerry, especially when weren't doing well. You'd see him go down on the sidelines during the games, and there was those rumors that he would like pick up the phone from the suite and like call the sidelines and tell them what plays to run and things like that. But I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, you can't help but love Jerry. Of course, you don't agree with every decision he's made, and it does seem like, when you think about last year, he was real quick to talk about making sure the attendance records and things like that. It always seemed like his mind was more so on money than it was on winning championships and everything. And I think that's just Jerry. I think he wants to win, but at the same time, his priority is to the Cowboys brand. Maybe not football all the time, but the Cowboys brand. So, depending on who you are, you either love Jerry or you don't.
Well, speaking of a player that seems to be similar with that, Ezekiel Elliott, he has he is he still elite? Does he have that ability, or is it just kind of the offense going through Dak now, or what are you seeing?
I was worried that we were gonna part ways with Zeke after the season, but seeing how he approached this offseason, seeing how he took care of his body, and just when you hear him speak, it's like his focus is on team first, not himself, not getting the contract like we saw back in 2019 when he was in Cabo and missed training camp and everything. But when you look on the field, I mean, he's got that burst that we haven't seen in a couple years. And then you look at how he's being used, how some of these other elite backs are being used. He's not getting the volume, but he's still getting the production, and I think that's good for him. And again, seeing his performance this year, I think he's still a top 5 running back in the league.
And obviously, he's definitely has the talent there, but there's also with Pollard there as well. I mean, he's getting a lot more touches. Is he going to stick around for a few years, or what's his contract situation?
As much as I like Pollard, because again, I was talking about this with my guy Mike on the podcast, and he's under the impression that a guy like Pollard is replaceable, so we probably won't resign him or extend him or anything like that. And while I think Pollard isn't necessarily replaceable, I do think that you can find that kind of production in the draft and not have to spend $5 or $6 million on a guy like Pollard. Because me personally, if it comes down to it, it's either like you can keep Pollard and Gallup or keep a Randy Gregory, and I think I'm going to go with a Randy Gregory personally.
Right. Absolutely. And so Randy Gregory has been key on the defense.
Oh yeah,
The defense really has improved. I've been using him in fantasy. You know,
yeah.
Diggs has been great. And Parsons, he looked lost on a couple plays early on.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those key defensive players and about the improved defense.
You mentioned Diggs, you mentioned Parsons, but then you look at the guys that we have at safety with KZ, with Curse, and we have Keanu Neal. He's been dealing with some things, but and then Malik Hooker as well. It's like all three of those guys, we brought them in on really team friendly deals, and it seems like every game they've all made really high impact plays. That's not something we've been used to. And addressing, we've always been kind of like a bottom of the barrel. We'll find somebody to play safety, and I haven't performed very well, but it was nice to see guys who are familiar with Dan Quinn to come in and to be making plays and to help a unit that had been struggling for a couple of years that we hadn't really been taking seriously. So I think the safeties have been key, but also you look at the depth on the defensive line with Osia Zigidua and now Chauncey Golston, and their ability to step in their rookie years and have the impact that they're having. That's been a big help with the loss of DeMarcus Lawrence.
And so is a lot of that on scheme then as well?
Yeah, Dan Quinn has definitely been one of, if not the biggest addition to the defense.
Would you say that some of these assistants, you talked about Kellen Moore, do you think they're going to get more opportunities in the offseason? Dan Quinn is going to get another opportunity to be a head coach, or, I mean, is that kind of the talk that the Cowboys are going to lose them eventually?
I don't think that's anybody's been when talking about that. I did see somebody tweet. It's like, what if Dan Quinn leaves and he becomes, I think it was like he becomes the head coach of the Denver Broncos, and then he brings along, I don't know if he said Kellen Moore or somebody like Kellen Moore. And then, the Broncos have a new quarterback, and it's like, again, it was just talking about Dan Quinn getting another opportunity. But I feel like if you have the type of season that we think we're going to have with this type of team, and, a quarterback like Dak and all these young pieces, and then you think about the Cowboys brand, would you be better off taking another head coaching job somewhere else, or better off staying here and, kind of building your legacy that way?
Yeah, some of these coaches, they don't necessarily get a second opportunity unless their team is in another Super Bowl or something like that. Dan Quinn, he had the opportunity. He may or may not get another one, but with that defense as well, how good is Diggs?
Man, I mean, 7 interceptions in 6 games, and then 2 pick sixes. He's playing at a level that a lot of people are saying he's the best cornerback in the league, and it's hard to argue with that. But then, of course, you've got guys like Jalen Ramsey who have been the best corner in the league for at least 5 years. Not the year he got drafted, but probably shortly after that. So I don't know if he's quite there yet, but I mean, he's playing at an all-pro level. You can't argue that.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of, like, on the other side of the ball, playing at all pro level, CeeDee Lamb has been amazing, and talk a little bit about that. And you talked about Gallup, Amari Cooper. He's been a little bit banged up. Is this one of the best wide receiver rooms that the Cowboys have had in a while? Or
Oh man. Let's see. I'm trying to think because I'm thinking back to the Romo years. Of course, he had the years with Des. He had T.O. for a couple of years. And then we saw, I don't know how good people might think Miles Austin is, but he kind of made Miles Austin. But at the same time, Miles Austin was a good player. But then you see him, like him and Lauren Robinson, they have those big years and they go and sign big contracts and they don't really do much. So, not saying that they're not good players, but it seemed like Romo was definitely a big help to them. But going back to the question, I mean, in my years as watching the Cowboys, this has to be the best wide receiver room that I've ever seen.
yeah, I mean, when you have Gallup as the number 3, I mean, who else do they have? Is kind of
Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, then Cedric Wilson, who's
yes,
man, he's coming up really big, and then even Noah Brown, he's like our 5th guy, but he even goes in there and makes some big first downs from time to time, and he's a good special teams player as well.
that helps as well. And so I heard that it helps CeeDee Lamb this year to finally have training camp because he didn't have training camp last year,
Right?
Or sorry, the preseason games. I think that was the big thing.
Well,
And
no, I was going to say, I'm sorry. I know that when you hear about training camp, he was just making a spectacular play every single day, and he was unguardable. So it looks like all those stories were true.
absolutely. Well, we talked about earlier, my buddy on Twitter, Spoon of Zeke, and we're in a dynasty league, and he is a huge CeeDee Lamb fan, and I ended up drafting him in the dynasty, and he drafted,
Nice.
yeah, and he drafted Amari Cooper, and yep, and so he really wanted CeeDee Lamb, so we kind of made a swap, and he has CeeDee Lamb now, and I have Cooper, and so. Cooper, he's going to get his numbers, isn't he? I mean, CD as well. CD is the number 1, right?
Yeah, right now, just because, I mean, apparently it's not only a hamstring that Cooper's dealing with, but he's dealing with like an ankle injury, and he's dealing with a couple of other minor things. And man, the guy's just a warrior. But we saw that at the beginning of the year that Amari was still the number 1 wide receiver. I mean, they were both having a good impact on the game. Like, I mean, you saw the Tampa Bay game. I believe they both had over 100 yards receiving, but I think Amari's been the more consistent one. And you can't. He has that chemistry with Dak that CD and Dak don't have quite yet.
And CD has that big play ability, like the end of the this last week.
Oh man, yeah,
that's got to be exciting to see as a Cowboy fan.
Yeah, it was nice because we talked about it on the podcast. Mike said asked if this was CD's breakout game, and he's had a couple of good games before, but I feel like this was his coming out party, like putting the league on notice that he's for real and like he might be the next wide receiver up.
Yeah. In talking about another pass catcher, how good is Dalton Schultz? I mean, is he for real? I mean, they have a decent tight end room, don't they?
Yeah, it's crazy because I thought that Blake Jarwin was gonna come back after recovering from his injury last year. I thought that he would kind of step right in, or it might take him a little bit of time, but I thought that he would be having a more consistent role. And you look at Dalton Schultz, and you can't take the guy off the field because you see the connection again between him and Dak. That's kind of he's become Dak's most trustworthy option on like a third down, or when he needs to pick up a first down. It seems like he's looking for Schultz. I believe Belichick even was quoted saying that we had to take Schultz out of the game to try to stall that offense. And he's definitely shown for real. I mean, again, you saw what he did last year in his first year as a starter after Jarwin went down, and again what he's doing this year. I mean, it's hard to argue that he's not for real.
How does he compare to one of the all-time greats, Jason Whitten?
Oh man, I think it's a little early, but I think he plays like Whitten because he seems to always be in the right spot. He knows where the soft spots in the defense are. He's got trustworthy hands. I know he's had a couple of drops this year, but he's just there's nothing exciting about him, but he just makes the right plays all the time.
Do you know if George Kittle invited him to the tight end U this year?
I don't, and I feel like we probably would have heard about that because every tight end who was invited was kind of tweeting about it, saying that they were there and that they had a good time, that they learned a lot. So I'm assuming he didn't.
Yeah, he's probably going to get invited again this year.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'll invite George Kittle to his tight end camp because Kittle's dealing with an injury and the year that he's having and everything.
That could be. That could be. Well, we talked earlier about coaches as well, and the Cowboys have some solid coordinators. What are your feelings on Mike McCarthy? Do you trust him? Is he going to be the guy, or what are your thoughts? And what's the fan base thinking?
So I know that the X's and O's guys, like the film grinder guys, the guys who appreciate the little things like on the sidelines while watching the game, they are really upset about his time management, when he calls timeouts, when he doesn't call timeouts, things like that. But when you got to take the good with the bad, right? And you see what he's allowing Kellen Moore to do, what he's allowing Dan Quinn to do. It's like he lets everybody do their job, and he's just gonna focus on what he needs to focus on. And again, of course, he needs to work on his clock management. But I'll take his bad clock management from time to time and letting his assistants and coordinators, have the freedom to do what they're supposed to do, as opposed to having a guy like we had previously who seemed to micromanage everybody and everything.
Yeah, so that's the difference between Jason Garrett and McCarthy.
Yeah, that, and I mean, you can't help but watch Mike McCarthy in his year and a half here and notice the in-game adjustments that he's making to put the team in a position to win, where Garrett, he wasn't always very good about that.
As an outsider, that's interesting that you say he was a micromanager, because as an outsider, I saw Jason Garrett almost just as an extension of Jerry Jones, and I didn't really see him. He didn't seem to have that much of a personality, and so, but like he kind of, within the team, he overstepped, or like at least kind of took too much control.
I think with Garrett, it's like to the media, during press conferences, everything very robotic, very generic, right? Not wanting to give anything away. But what something that surprised me, it's like after the Giants game, he was taking pictures with Zeke, and it seemed like there's no bad blood between them. So I think people like Garrett the person, but it's as far as Garrett the coach, there was no connection there. And I think that the players, again, like Garrett the player, the person, but just never the coach, because he didn't know how to connect with his players, and a lot of players have come out and said that.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I went to the training camp, the Bears training camp in 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to see up close Mitch Trubisky and see him, and he was just a great guy. He stayed longer than any other player, signing autographs for the kids and all that. Just a great guy, but he just didn't have it to be that starting quarterback. And so similar, Jason Garrett. Does he get another shot to be a head coach?
Oh man, I don't know, because when you look at what's going on with the Giants the last 2 years since he's been there, their offense has not been good. So I don't know. I can't see another team giving him that opportunity. I feel like he's going to have to prove that he has what it takes to be a good offensive coordinator in the modern NFL.
Absolutely. And he was on the hot seat. It just seemed like several years, wasn't he? When he
I
with the
know with
Cowboys?
the fans, he was definitely on the hot
Yeah.
seat. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like after the 2017 season, a lot of people were ready for him to part ways, just because of how he handled a lot of the injury situations. I mean, you think about it, in the Garrett era, like if we were to lose a Tyron Smith or a Sean Lee on defense, the season was pretty much over. Here, you see all the injuries we're dealing with this year that a lot of people aren't really talking about. They might not be the most impactful, but we had a game without Zach Martin 1 week. We had a game without Lyle Collins, 5 games without Lyle Collins. We've had games without DeMarcus Lawrence, and you see how we're performing. I don't know if Garrett would have that same impact on the team.
And you talked about injuries. Jalen Smith, like he just injured, or has he lost a step? He signed here with the Packers, right? And I just I think I saw that meme of that, where he was just completely
Swiping.
yeah
out of a play, right? That's kind of been his thing. It's when you watch the film, like, because people, the fan base really turned on Jalen Smith hard after the 2018 season. But then when you watch the tape, like Jalen said, he said to watch the tape, and when he did, nothing was ever really good about it. He more often than not took himself out of plays, didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't really diagnose what was going on, and when he couldn't read and react fast enough anymore.
So we talked about a lot of optimism, even with the injuries, even with, parting ways with, I mean, he was a top draft pick, wasn't he? Was he the first, second round, Jalen Smith?
Jalen Smith was a second round pick, and I think when when he was drafted, a lot of there was about a 50-50 of people really liked the risk of because of
The
knowing what he
injury.
could be, but then people were like, man, that was really early. You probably could have got him in the third, maybe even the fourth with his medical history.
And so with the injuries and all that, there's still a lot of optimism. How are you feeling realistically about like a Super Bowl run for the Cowboys this year?
I've been watching the Cowboys for a long time, and I've seen a lot of good. I've seen a lot of bad, and in my older age, I've grown to I've come to realize that it's best to take it week by week.
Mhm.
Uh, probably 4 years ago, every year that the season was coming around, I'm like, okay, Cowboys are going to Super Bowl. Of course, it's been over 20 years since we've done that. But this year I'm taking it week by week. But I really feel like we do have a special thing going. I think this team really is special, and I would be I would be shocked if we did not make it to at least the divisional round or the NFC Championship game this year.
Is it important for this team to have home field advantage?
Mm, I don't think so. I don't think that if we don't, I don't think that's gonna take away our confidence or anything like that. No.
Because when you look at the team, probably the toughest place to play might be Green Bay, and then that would be tough for anybody. And is this team built to be able to play, in frigid weather, snowy weather? I mean, Ezekiel Elliott might be able to take control of a game like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think I know that when you say the frigid weather, it makes me think about the game in New England in 2019, where that weather wasn't a good game, but we were in it the whole time. I can't see the weather affecting these guys. I don't think Dak would let it affect him, and the team feeds off of Dak, so I don't think that Dak will let the weather affect the team either. Um, but no, I kind of I'd like to see us go to Green Bay during the playoffs on the road, going to Aaron Rodgers' house and see what we could do in Lambeau and the what is it called, like the winter. I forget there's a nickname for it during the winter, but I'd like to see what this team could do.
Yeah, and I tell my Packer friends here, I would love to see the Packers lose in the NFC Championship this year. So,
Yes, sir, absolutely.
they're obviously the Cowboys have a lot of potential, and they're right there. What are some needs as you look ahead to the draft? Presumably, they're going to have in the late 20s, maybe 30s,
Hmm.
picking. What are some draft needs that you see for this team going into 2022?
Right off the top of my head, I would think that we should maybe look at another tackle, maybe a left tackle because of Tyron, his age and his injury history. I would also like to maybe address getting a younger safety we're gonna have for the next 5 years. So maybe a left tackle, maybe a free safety.
Yeah, you talk about the offensive line has really been a staple for the Cowboys for years. Are they as good as they have been in the past, or I mean, are they younger? I'd have to really look at that.
When you look at Tyron Smith and Travis
Zach,
Frederick
yep.
and Zach Martin,
Hmm.
having them kind of like at their prime, I don't know if it'll ever get any better than that. But
Hmm.
Lyle Collins, when he was healthy and playing his last year, he was playing at a Pro Bowl level. Of course, Zach Martin is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's
Hmm.
probably the best guard in the league. And
Hmm.
then of course, you've got Tyron, who, when healthy, is still playing at a Hall of Fame level as well. The only thing is Biotis is kind of dealing with some growing pains, and maybe this is just some recency bias, but it was a little concerning to see all the holds going against Connor Williams. But prior to that, he had been having a good season. So, I don't want to compare it to the Martin Frederick and Tyron days, but I don't think it's that far off.
Right, and you look at, I mean, with Pollard and with Elliott, that's a good one-two punch there.
Hmm.
And I'm sure it helps as well to have the talented right wide receivers just to kind of spread things out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just I mean, you have a guy like Dak, then you have those receivers, and then you have the one-two punch, like you mentioned, and then the offensive line. But I feel like, man, just Kellen Moore, he really elevates everybody.
So, what would it mean to Dallas to have a Super Bowl run, to be in the Super
Oh
Bowl
my
again?
gosh, to to go to the Super Bowl for Dak to have the year that he had, to go through everything, with the media and all the non-believers, all the comparisons and everything, for him to take Dallas to the Super Bowl and to win it, that would just be, I can't really even explain it just because it's been so long. But there's there's about a 50%, no, I would say 40% of Cowboys fans, especially on Twitter, who still to this day don't believe that Dak is a franchise quarterback.
Really? Yeah. So, what are they seeing? I mean, he seems to have that edge. So what are they seeing? Is it just because the injuries, or why not?
They think that if not everything is perfect around him, that he can't succeed. That's what the excuses are. That's what they think, but he's already proven that that's not the case.
Well, yeah. I mean, that should have been silenced last year when you had when he went out, right?
Yeah. And what's funny, it's like they'll say if he doesn't have an offensive line or wide receivers or a running back, that he can't do anything. But then you see those same people talking about, well, how is he supposed to succeed without having an offensive line, or how can he have a good offense without wide receivers, things like that. So the excuses they use for against Dak for him being or excuse me, the arguments they make against Dak for him being a good quarterback, they use those same arguments as excuses for other quarterbacks.
Well, speaking of other quarterbacks, is there another team quarterback that you would not want to see in the playoffs?
Mm. I think I'll just say Tom Brady. Reason being is because of his experience, but that's a little easy. So, I think next up would be, as much as I want to see this, I would be terrified to see Aaron Rodgers, right? Regardless if it's in Lambeau or in Dallas, just because he seems to have had our number.
Well, yeah, and he's had the Bears number too. So yeah, he definitely he owns a lot of people. It's obvious. So does Tom Brady. Yeah, that would be an interesting matchup to see the Bucks. In I think Dak would have enough, especially with the secondary of the Bucks. So what about Arizona? Do they scare you at all? I mean, we don't haven't really heard a lot about them until the last couple of weeks when they're still undefeated and only undefeated team.
Yeah, I haven't got to watch a lot of Arizona games outside of just watching highlights, but I do like Kyler Murray, and of course, when you have a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, and then you bring on an AJ Green, who he's showing a second, a second life there in Arizona, but then you add complementary pieces like a Christian Kirk and then a Rondell Moore, who, man, seeing him schemed up against our defense, I don't know who on our defense could stop him. Outside of that, I don't. They don't really scare me or intimidate me, just because Kyler Murray, he hasn't played in a lot of big games in the
Mhm.
NFL. So I think that our experienced coaching staff would be the difference maker against the Arizona and their inexperienced coaching staff as far as playoffs go.
And is that part of like the argument against Dak, that he hasn't played in those big games, or he hasn't, because he hasn't won a playoff game yet, has he?
Yeah, he won his first one in
Oh,
2018 against Seattle.
wow. Yeah, yeah. In Cowboy, it's almost like in dog years. I feel like in Cowboy years, that feels like so long ago, doesn't it?
It really does. It feels like 10 years ago.
So he's got that, and that was a knock on Romo for a while, that he couldn't win the big one, right?
Yeah, it was. And then he finally won that one in against the Eagles. We ended up beating them 3 times that year. That's something that was unheard of in the NFL. But it was nice for him to get that monkey off his back, quote unquote. But you know, Romo, Jerry Jones admits that he didn't really do a good enough job of building teams around Romo. At the same time, Romo seemed to always have a knack for making the wrong play at the worst possible time. And
Yeah.
I don't think Dak is that player.
So right here, are you going to predict that the Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot, huh? I'm gonna predict. I'm gonna play it safe, and I'm gonna predict that the Cowboys make it to the NFC Championship game.
And who they losing to, do you think?
I don't think they're losing, but I have a feeling. I actually predicted this on my podcast, me and
Yeah.
Mike, but I predicted that we were gonna face Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship game.
Having just seen my team face Aaron Rodgers, and that would be scary. Just he's on a mission. I do like how Dak is on a mission too. And as an outsider, you see all the pieces and a lot of the things that you've outlined, and I'm going to stop short and say I'm rooting for the Cowboys,
Yeah.
but I'm not rooting against them. Or
Okay.
I'm not. If they win, that's awesome. I love all the players. I really like Dak. Just something about Jerry Jones. It's hard to, and maybe it's kind of the outsider. It's hard to kind of like Jerry Jones.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, mainly because it seems like it's all about him, right? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe, and I don't know if that's part of it to take the pressure off players. I mean, does he kind of try to do that with his persona as well?
No, I think Jerry just, when you've been as successful as he has, and he's been in the limelight as long as he has, you just kind of, you know how to talk to the camera. You know how to kind of steal the spotlight. You know how to work the spotlight in your favor. I don't think he's ever trying to take anything away from the players, because any player that had a relationship with Jerry says that Jerry treats you like family, loves you like family. And I think Jerry truly is a family man. I think he looks at his players as family, as family. But I don't think he selfishly, or like his motive is, I want to take the spotlight off the guys and put it on me. I don't think that at all.
Is that the best part of kind of being a Cowboys fan?
Is what, Jerry and his spotlight, and
Or
his,
just kind of the family kind of atmosphere? Definitely have Cowboy fans all over the country.
oh
They're
yeah,
America's team,
right.
yeah. I mean, is that kind of the best part of it, or what is the best part of being a Cowboys fan?
I think, for just speaking only for me, being born and raised here in Texas, it's like when you're born, you're a Cowboys fan. As soon as you're born, and then if you grow up and go your own way, that's your own business. But it seems like it's kind of almost like a sense of pride to live in Texas and root for the Cowboys and see them do well. So I guess just the history of the Cowboys and everything, it's kind of, that's my favorite part. Kind of being like the team that everybody hates almost.
Yeah, absolutely, and they've had a lot of success over the years, and I definitely appreciate you coming on. I could talk forever about football, and I wish you definitely the best, and everyone can find you where again?
You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Ryan15.
Perfect, and we have that scrolling here, and so Cowboys Pod, you have your fantasy show. I'm definitely going to be hitting you up on some fantasy questions as well.
Please
You
do.
can never have too much advice on fantasy football.
Absolutely, man.
Well,
I really
thanks.
appreciate you having me on, Andy. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. This has been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series on the Dallas Cowboys, and we are out.
Peace, guys.